also, Duscae 2.0 patch has added many new features. Some are more minor, like a couple new scenes, some new animations, new dialogue, which continues to be great, by the way, and more new terrain. My favorite addition is that switching between attacking and defending is quicker. In the old version, your attack animation had to finish before being able to do anything else, like the defensive stance or a dodge warp. After the patch, once a regular attack deals damage, you're able to defend. Let's look at some footage from before and after the patch to have a visual. This is from before. We can see that Noctis is slashing with the Avenger and he strikes, and it's a little hard to see, but the animation of the swing's follow-through is still finishing because Noct is still holding the Avenger, and then he gets hit by the Gorilla. Just from watching it, it might look like the player forgot to hit the defense button, but the defense button would not do anything until Noct's animation finished. If we had a video of the player's controller, then I could prove it, but unfortunately I do not, so you'll have to take my word for it that the defense button wouldn't do anything until that animation was completed. In order to defend in a fight, the player would have to anticipate when the enemy would attack, then know to get ready for that time, because if you're attacking and the enemy attacks at you, then you can't avoid it. Now let's compare the defense after the patch. As you can see, they're both slashing at each other. Noctis' attack lands first, and the attack animation continues to finish, but now he's able to switch into defense. Here's another one. Noct hits the Gorilla, and he's still following through with his swing, but he's able to interrupt his follow-through and defend from the Gorilla. Before the patch, you had to be very conscious about using the appropriate ability, or attacking or defending at the right time. That can be interesting, but it takes some effort, and it can be hard to learn or remember if you haven't played the game in a while. So, with the version 2.0, it's easier to pick up and fight smoothly, particularly in the thick of mobs, because in the old version, I would run around the outsides of groups of soldiers and pick off the ones that wandered away from the group. Now that I can more quickly switch between attacking and defending, it's easier to get in the middle of mobs and wreak havoc, which I prefer. Another feature is that tilting the left stick affects how you attack. I'm not sure if this was in the old version. The tutorial of the old version displays the left stick plus square or X as the attack, but I thought that the stick was only used to direct your attacks at enemies, not to execute different moves. The 2.0 tutorial specifies that tilting the stick in different directions while attacking changes how it unfolds, which is a good clarification. I enjoy this mechanic quite a bit, particularly the move where Noctis backflips away from the enemy, then you can disengage or strike the same guy again. I know that this backflip, at least, is new to the 2.0 patch. I also like that it's a smooth way to stop a combo or distance yourself from the enemy. With swords and spears, tilting forward will stab, tilting right or left will make Noctis swing his weapon that way, and tilting back distances yourself from the enemy. However, tilting back and holding the attack button with the Zweihander charges a broad swinging attack, which is another useful option for crowd control. And, of course, charging for longer increases the damage output. What is interesting about charging is that lighter attacks like a soldier's axe don't stagger you or disrupt your charging. Heavier attacks like a soldier's kick or a Gorilla's body slam do knock you over and disrupt your charging. This is a nice touch so you can more easily use charged attacks and not have to worry as much about what the enemies are doing. I'm interested to see how this features into the final game, and to see what kind of attacks will be executed with different weapons by tilting the left stick. I'm going to guess that in the final game, the heavier Buster Sword-sized weapons will be chargeable, and the lighter weapons like regular swords, daggers, and smaller spears will have the disengaging backflip instead. And maybe in the final game some more weapon types will be added and different attacks will be possible from those weapons by tilting. The dodge roll is also a new addition. It's nice to have a defensive option without worrying about it draining your MP. Dodge roll ended up replacing the dodge warp in version 2.0. I like both dodge warp and dodge roll, so I'd like them both to be in the final game. The dodge roll seems more maneuverable. Mid-roll you can sort of direct it with the left stick to slightly turn the dodge roll, which is good for positioning yourself around the enemies, while the dodge warp you can only move straight ahead in the direction you're facing. A disadvantage of the dodge roll is that it provides less protection than the dodge warp. I don't know how many invincibility frames the dodge roll has, if any at all, but you still can be damaged while rolling. So you can't protect yourself from Behemoth's swipe with the dodge roll. Dodge warp is a more defensive move than dodge roll because you're invulnerable mid-warp. Also, it's faster than dodge roll, but it costs MP. So this is sort of like the manual defense button. In the final game, maybe dodge warp will be the defense button plus triangle or Y, which I find more comfortable than pressing the defense button plus X or A. So this way there could be both dodge roll and dodge warp in the final game. The link attacks are another cool addition. I like that if you hit it too early, you break the combo, which makes you need to pay attention and you can't just mindlessly mash the square button like what I do in Kingdom Hearts 2 with reaction commands. The attacks are well choreographed and fun to watch, but I can't pay attention to that while playing because I get too nervous about messing up the link. Also, this function gives me more of an incentive to keep an eye on what the party members are doing and to work with them a little more, because before the patch I would mainly just do my own thing in combat, occasionally rescue party members, and hope that someone would come to my aid if I needed it, but now there's added synergy between the members. The on-tour missions add some more side quests. These tasks make sense. It's believable that Ignis would want some rare mushrooms for cooking, or that someone would accidentally have dropped something while adventuring around. I wish that the members that were not on tour would get a percentage of the experience, though, so that they don't fall too far behind the questing members. And I hope that the uncompleted on-tour side quests will be saved in a menu somewhere so that you can go back and complete them later, so that you don't have to go on the side quests right at the moment when they're offered to you. Also, we got a new combatant, the Kotobel Pass. It's cool to have another monster to fight, but this guy's a pain. He has a ton of HP and no particularly weak spots, so it feels like it takes forever to kill it. Most likely the developers were short on time and were not able to implement as much complexity into fighting this guy as they would have liked. But basically how the guy works is he uses a bunch of area of effect attacks, so if you're attacking on the ground, then you need to get out of there before the Kotobel Pass starts to stomp, or you'll be knocked into your emergency HP. The fighting is extremely repetitive. At first I just attacked him, then got away to avoid the area of effect, and doing this is tedious, so I found a strategy online where you equip the Wyvern Lance to your descend slot, then lock on and warp to the Kotobel Pass's upper back by its neck, then hold down on the attack button to get in a bunch of aerial attacks, and when you fall away, warp back up. And since the Wyvern Lance regenerates MP, you won't run out of MP to warp with. Then repeat these aerial attacks and warps until the Kotobel Pass dies, which takes a long time. I expected the fight to be like the E3 2013 trailer where Noctis was climbing around on the buildings, or like the combat in Shadow of the Colossus. I was thinking you would be able to climb and warp around on a big enemy, attacking different spots while the enemy thrashes you around. Disappointingly, you can't even stand on the Kotobel Pass's back. Hopefully in the final game fighting large enemies is more intricate, because I would be pretty disappointed if the strategy for fighting the Titan boss was limited to spamming your warp strikes and holding down the attack button. Some other smaller additions to the 2.0 demo is the parrying system. Now, when parrying an attack, there's a contracting circle around the button prompt. I couldn't tell if it increases or decreases your parry's damage output depending on how far the circle has contracted. It didn't really seem like it, but at least it helps time parries, and little aids like this are welcome additions. I experienced some camera control issues, like the right stick wouldn't turn the camera at sometimes, or the camera would spin when I wasn't controlling it. This only happened a few times. Maybe it was just my controller. I know they meddled with the sensitivity on the camera, so maybe this was a consequence of that. There's a cool moment where Gladiolus tells Noctis not to attack an enemy and let him strike first. Then they tussle a bit, but Gladio doesn't initiate combat and just waits around for you to do something. Hopefully this is a tease for the final game and your partner will follow through with what they say they're going to do, because stuff like this is less polished and less realistic. Before I end, I still want to say that I have a problem with Cindy's outfit. I talked about this in a previous video, but her over-sexualization still bugs me. If they don't redesign her, at least zip her jacket up. I also want to briefly talk about some of the revealed changes from Versus XIII to Final Fantasy XV. It has been revealed that Stella from the Versus XIII trailers and the E3 2013 trailer, is not in 15 anymore. Also, the invasion scene from the 2011 Versus XIII trailer is no longer in the game. That seems logical because it looked like that scene was the introduction for Stella, and since she's not in the game anymore, that scene is not needed. Instead of meeting Stella, now Noctis and his friends have left the Crown City before the invasion. Apparently there's a good reason for why they left, so that should add some complexity to the story. Also, the development team will save time not having to make a whole invasion and escape scenario for the game. I'm a little disappointed that Stella's cut because her character design is cool, and I would have liked to see that standoff that was featured in the trailer between Noct and Stella. I also really like her yellow magic, which I think Luna, who, is replacing Stella, can use as well, but I really like that part from a Versus XIII trailer where Stella is summoning her sword and that warmly glowing yellow magic is radiating from it. So it's a little unfortunate that we don't get that anymore, but the developers seem to have been thorough about their decisions, and there's nothing that I can do about it, so I trust that these decisions have been made for the better of the game. Tabata said why they were making these changes is because they wanted 15 to stand on its own as a complete and coherent story. So either that means that Versus XIII was intended to have sequels or follow-up games, which Square didn't want for a numeral entry, or its story was too similar or too closely tied with Final Fantasy XIII's. Now, I know what I'm going to say is speculation, but people, myself included, like to hear theories. Nomura has said that the game has a self-contained climax, but he would like to make a series out of it, so maybe changes had to be made because the game didn't work so well as an individual standalone piece. And for my other theory, which I think is probably a little more likely, we know that Stella is being cut, and from the Versus XIII trailer, we know that she had a connection to Etro, who provided her and Noctis with their magic powers. Etro is in the 13 games. Also, Stella suspects that there's something she must do or accomplish because she has been given these powers. And that sounds similar to a focus from Final Fantasy XIII. Since Square wanted Final Fantasy XV to be its own coherent story, maybe they thought that the connections/similarities to 13, which may have been plot points, made 15 less of its own thing and more of a 13 spin-off. Anyway, after 15's release, I'd be interested to see what the original story for Versus XIII was and what the changes were. Maybe someone could adapt the original script into a manga or something, like how George Lucas's original Star Wars script and Joss Whedon's original script for the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie were adapted into comic books. Alright, that's all. I have some other Final Fantasy XV videos, including a review of episode Duscae before the patch, and a spoiler-free video of my early impressions on episode Duscae. So, thanks for listening, and check out those videos if you're interested to hear more of my thoughts on Final Fantasy XV.